Welcome to another episode of Discord Discussions, one in which hopefully my voice will be recorded this time as the last time I failed to record myself, which is awesome. But this week we will going into the topic of what it means to actually be a good mate. Like everybody talks about finding a good woman, right? Well, what does it mean to actually be a good mate? Are you a guy that's worth that person's time and energy, right? So, on a panel today, we've got Chris, who I'll give him a moment to introduce himself. Friend of mine, Hot Wheels. He's a young man. He'll be joining us for an alternate view. And Phil, who's also a younger man. So, Chris, go for your quick intro.
Hey, I'm Chris, or ML Overdrive. I don't know. I'm nobody. I'm mid 40s, white collar, office professional. That's about it. And I have
Kyle,
opinions on things.
and you're well educated, so let's not
I don't know
deny.
about well, okay. I have a degree. I have a degree in English literature, which I got after getting expelled from 2 high schools. So
Oh wow.
make of that what you will.
Hot Wheels, go ahead.
I'm Hot Wheels. I don't like using my real name online.
That's
I'm
fine.
15. Yeah. Uh,
That's wise.
Decently educated. I mean, here
Well,
I'll show you real quick. I got my books I'm reading right now. Got
there
quite
you
a
go.
bit. Uh,
Reading of and the fact that you read is a plus. Like me and Chris
Another rare thing.
right. So,
yeah.
and
All
then
this is a little bit new to me too.
it's
I just
a
started making some changes with myself, so
that's a good thing. And Phil,
I am a 23-year-old dude. I've owned a couple companies, failed a lot of them. Had a more of an old school upbringing, so
and you're
I look at
Jew.
life. Yeah, that too. Uh, and so I penny pinch as well. So I guess that counts.
So part of part of the discussion that makes these people in the room matters. Chris is what you would commonly known as I don't want to call him an atheist, but he challenges all belief systems to
Iconoclast is what I like to think of myself as. I'm a bit of an iconoclast, and I'm definitely all about what paraphrase Chomsky that any system of authority should be challenged, and if it cannot give a rational defense, justification for itself, then it should be disassembled to increase the scope of human freedom.
so I'm your Judeo-Christian average. I grew up in the church. My mom was the praise service leader, so I have a very, you know, Christian traditional upbringing. Men in my family worked. My grandfather ran a farm. Phil's Jewish, and that's a whole nother thing. So you get three different perspectives on pretty much any topic, and then I don't know what Hot Wheels' belief system is. So I'll start the discussion in the fact that being a good mate is not an easy question to answer. And Phil and I were chatting a little bit before we started. He's like, I really don't know how to be a good mate. I'm not been one. Phil's our unmarried, uncoupled. Uh,
It's a very strong way of putting it.
well, I mean, you're.
Well, it's kind
you
of focusing on the uns. I think that's a little.
The unsmart, no.
Oh no, no, no! That's not
they're
that at
they're
all.
for me. It's more
23.
so.
I mean, if you'd been married by 23, I would have questions.
No, I'm almost 25. Did I call out 23
Same.
early?
Well, same. It's 20. Same thing.
Yeah,
I mean,
you're still.
that's a
You
little.
don't have your
Yeah.
frontal lobe yet.
Because been married is past term, so that would, to me, that means you've already gotten married and been divorced by 25. So I would have questions. Yeah,
Well,
Mm-hmm.
actually, I did that. So I got married at
you
21.
walked into that one.
Oh well, I mean, it is my life, right? So
Fair enough. Yeah.
I got married for all the wrong reasons, and 100%, I was absolutely not a good mate at that time, based on what my criteria of a good mate is now. But I had no clue that I was a bad mate, right?
There's bad reasons too. I had a buddy who got married at he would have been, I think about we were the same age. So yeah, we were like 29 at the time, and he married his longtime girlfriend of it was 9 years. They'd been together for 9 years, and in his words, he said he like either had to marry her or dump her. And this was in a conversation him and I had one time before he got married. And I said, well, those are like two really there's nothing in the middle. Those are two extremes. I mean, that doesn't sound like a good thing. And he said that he was going to marry her because he thought that if he split up with her, that she might kill herself, or go back to her life of drugs and crime. I didn't say anything because back then I wasn't nearly as forceful and opinionated as I am now. I wasn't as mature either, but I didn't go to the wedding. I made up again, I was a weaker person back then. I made some BS excuse about not being able to get the time off work, but I just couldn't go to the wedding like the rest of my friends were doing and pretend that this was a good thing. And 8 months after they were married, they were divorced. She went back to her life of drugs, like hard drugs, like meth. She abandoned their cat. Like, she just completely lost her mind. Hooked up with a guy on probation, a literal criminal, like just the whole thing. And my buddy was on antidepressants. He was on suicide watch for a while. He almost killed himself. So yeah, there's like being, I think there's bad reasons for marrying people too, even if you're some kind of match. I mean, just his reasoning. I remember his reasoning so clearly because it was his words. He said, I feel like I either have to marry her or dump her. Well, and in my mind now, I wish I could go back to that time and tell him.
Oh, don't do that.
Well, if those are your options, then you have no option. You dump her. Like, you shouldn't be marrying somebody where you're even considering the possibility, the alternate possibility is completely getting them out of your life. That means that has to be somewhat palatable to you to even be on the menu. So I think if you're marrying somebody, you should be pretty all in. It should be like convicting on a jury.
Well, so when I got married the second time, right, to my current wife, Sandy, of whom I have like the best conceivable relationship, and Chris and Phil know the fact that my wife and I are just
it's a strong statement. I think best for you.
I'd
agree with that. Best for you.
Well, yeah. So,
like, considering them, like, yeah, no, from your perspective, you've knocked it out of the park.
Right, and for her perspective too, she feels the exact same way. You ask my wife, and she'll be the first to tell you that she hit the lottery with me because of how I treat her. So
yeah,
that carries so much more weight than any like if you were to call it a shortcoming. I'm not rich, right? I don't have money, so that's
you're not the 666, but what you are, I think, is you're naturally like aggressive and masculine. You're malleable, and you're reasonable. I think those three things go well together. The malleable part kind of sounds a bit whatever, but I don't mean it like a negative. I mean, like, when your wife gives you reasonable, critical feedback about your behavior or something in your life, you take it seriously, and if it's reasonable,
I'll make an adjustment
act on it.
Yeah.
Well, for example, like your recent really wonderful, like, hard to do weight loss.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that was partially because of some feedback from her. And no doubt, I'm sure you were thinking of her, and no doubt she's happier with you in your current form.
Oh, yeah.
You were, 25% heavier or whatever you were. You lost a lot of weight. Good for you.
And so it's
I need to work on it.
Like, it was funny, as my wife made the comment to me. She goes, "Baby, you're not healthy. You need to get in shape." And I'm like, I'm a stud. Like, you married this. Like, boom, look at this. Feel that. I'm completely full of shit. Like, I was at 255 pounds.
Geneticist about health?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes.
Man.
I am a professional salesman. I will say with supreme belief, whatever it is. But that's also comes from being a salesman my whole life. But
Well, and it's that confidence, that aggression and confidence you have, which is a classically masculine trait to just like, oh, I'm going to try this, even
Fuck
though it's
it.
probably not.
Oh
Like,
yeah,
what the hell?
this is gonna be bad, but fuck it, let's do it. Yeah,
That's a very women. That's not. I don't think that's a feminine trait, and I
no.
think it's a good thing. It's not a feminine trait.
You imagine?
Yeah, that's a masculine
Yeah.
thing.
You imagine if women had the same thoughts that men have at our ages, right? At 16, we're like, dude, I can jump you on my bike. Here, lay down. What do you mean? Just lay down on the road. Nothing bad will happen to you. Here, I'm going to put a cinder block and a piece of plywood. This amazing level of construction and engineering is all this going into saving me from 120 pounds of me and a bike landing on your person. But this is a really good idea. We should definitely do this.
I think a lot unfolds from pure biology too. When you look at like some of the strongest evidence we have for difference in the sexes comes from really from toddler, from 6 month to 2 year old kids. They at that age, males already show a preference and interest in things. So like toy trucks and blocks, and females show an interest in people. So so toys of like human figures,
Right.
or actual people. They're just more social, and that's from the ages of like 6 months to 2 years. That's a very consistently found result in all the studies that I'm aware of. And of course, those ages are far too young to be like, you don't have object permanence at that age. You have no sense of language. I don't think you really have I think you're just kind of like a moment to moment consciousness when you're that young. I don't think you have coherence over time. So
no, you don't understand your own fact that you're over time. No,
Yeah,
you don't
you
get
just
that
kind of
until
like
you're
it-
like I don't think you get that until your
machine.
30s, dude.
Yeah, some people never get it, but yeah, like when you're that young, I think you're just kind of an experience receiving and having machine. You're just, and so
You're
the
reactionary.
the point that is that the idea that you could be at all affected by socialization and by because the leftists and the postmodernists like to insist that basically biology has nothing to do with how like human personality develops and all that sort of thing, and how gender differences are. They say it's all a social construction, and it's like, well, then why can we see these very clear differences in interest between boys and girls from ages so young, where it's not possible that any of our advertising or propaganda, none of that could be
There.
infecting them, because they don't have the ability to retain it. They don't understand it. So to me, what's his name? Is a Canadian guy. Steven Pinker wrote a book called The Blank Slate, which just
Yeah, I've heard of him.
gives the full case like it needs to be made. But I mean, sadly, we have these postmodernists running around that are basically denying reality, and they're claiming that human beings are born a totally blank slate, and that everything that's written upon that slate is from environmental and social causes. And that's just not true.
Oh,
It's
there's
just categorically, scientifically untrue.
well, even more so, and I don't want to bring back on the topic, right? Because it is important to talk about the differences between how men operate and how women operate.
I guess the point I was making was that like so much unfolds from those two differences. I think one of the reasons that men are more aggressive and take more risks is because we're interested in things and not people. If we were more interested in people, I think we'd be more naturally empathic. And does that sound like women? It sounds like women to me. So
Right, and so the other side of that too is, and kind of springboarding that back to the topic at hand. My belief on what makes a good mate is an individual that understands that when they got married, okay, that you're no longer an individual, in the context of what you do only affects you, right? When you're a single guy, you only have to worry about you, right? And the funny thing is, what Hot Wheels, I'm going to call on you in a second for this next. I want you to comment on this. So, the challenge a young man has is at 16, he's like, okay, I like chicks, but right now they're crazy, right? At 16, because they're They're changing. They're getting assaulted with feminism. They're getting assaulted with all these things that they don't need men. Blah 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 blah.
Well, I'd want to hear from the young guys on this because, like, when I was growing up, it was so. When I was growing up, there was like basic. It was before the internet was really a thing. It was still like CompuServe. So
Yeah,
there was none of
they were
that.
message boards. They weren't. It wasn't interactive the
but there
same
were
way.
no girls on those. Yeah, and it was just kind of like girls were just kind of they were girls, and you just knew the girls in the neighborhood and that you went to school with, and they weren't like crazy or weird or like there was none of these social pressures that there are now. They weren't obsessed with their phones. They were all like most of them read books, even the dumb ones.
Yeah.
And so it's I want to hear from the young guys on this, and I'll just listen because it's so different now.
Oh yeah, but my point being is, and what I was going to bring to was when we were growing up, Chris, you and me, and I don't know about you, but I had no fear when it came to talking to people, right? And I
was shy with everyone. Yeah, I didn't give girls any preference. I just didn't want to talk to anyone.
Right now, whereas I was like the social, like, let me talk to everybody, right? Especially girls. As soon as I discovered what boobs were, they were the greatest invention ever. And I was immediately wanted to hold them and touch them. Like, that was my first thought and focus in life. I must touch these things. So, from 13 or so to 16, the level of rejection that I experienced from the opposite sex is amazing. Like, I was turned down more often than you could possibly imagine. And yet, I couldn't understand. I literally would ask my mom, why don't they like me back? I would treat them so well, right? Because it never...
I had the opposite problem. It sounds like such a humble brag, but like I wasn't being pursued by a bunch of chicks. It wasn't that. But in hindsight, I now know that there were a few girls from like the ages of 11 to 18. There were a few little cute girls that were really like doing everything they could
to get your attention. Totally clueless.
Oh, okay, so I'll just tell a quick story. So like at 12 years old, I joined a bowling league, a bowling league in Port Coquitlam. Pocompton, as it was then known, the murder capital of Canada. But my mom had no problem with me just going across the tracks into South Poco, which was just crazy, to that bowling alley, which was like in the middle of. But anyways, it was fine. It was good for me. I never got in trouble. But anyways, I was there at this bowling alley just doing bowling league shit at 12 years old. And so we had teams, and there was a 12-year-old girl on another team, but there's like 8 teams, so just all kids. So you're always interacting. And she one day, like, I'd seen her hitting on other boys and doing like she'd sit in their lap all of a sudden and just start being really cute. Like, it was so on the nose. She had no idea what she was doing. None of us did, right? She was just like figuring it out. And so because of that, like, everything she was doing was just way too heavy-handed. Not her fault. It was just a young girl. None of us knew what to do. So I guess one day it was my turn. It's not like I was even special. She'd play cute with a couple of the other boys, but
who would give her attention?
It just never really went anywhere. And she was cute, but we're all so young, and it's in a public place. There's adults around. Like, we're bowling. This is weird. She comes up to me one day and starts doing her thing on me, and I don't like being touched by anybody, and I never have. Like, probably vaguely, I'm on the spectrum somewhere. I like being touched by my girlfriend, and that's it. So I had no interest. I was like pushing her away, and like literally, she was trying to just sit in my lap when it wasn't my turn, and I was sitting on the bench. And I go up to bowl, and I guess she's just like, she's got really frustrated that she's not, like, because I think the other boys would, like, give her some attention.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't rejecting her. They just didn't know what to do. So they just didn't go any further, but they would, like, let her sit in the lap and, like, giggle and whatever. But I wasn't giving her any of that because I didn't even know what to do with that. I was just like, get away from me, you're weird. And she comes up to me from behind as I'm getting ready to bowl, and I always wore a hat. It was like my security blanket. She whips the hat off my head and says, "Oh, I get your hat." And she's just doing this she just wants to get my attention. Okay, I didn't process it that way. I processed it like, what? You took that? That's not cool. I turn around and I grab for my hat. She takes it away, and then she smacks me in the face with it. She probably doesn't know my hat has a big metal buckle on the back of it. So she cracks me across the head, cuts my head a little bit with my own hat, and a little trickle of blood comes down. Like 0.5 seconds later, I have slugged her in the gut, and she is folded just in half like a lawn chair and drops and is making seal noises. And all of a sudden, I just take my hat back, but all like, bowling alley's gone silent. And people are like, "Whoa, what the?" And adults coming over, and so I don't know what to do. So I just kind of like turn away, like I'm gonna go back to bowl, and then I hear her getting up, and I turn around just in time to get cracked in the nuts by her. And so I was like, oh, and I just wheeze out, "You bitch!" And I'm just, I was just going to like, I was going to suplex her at that point. And then the adults come in, and years later, I'm just like, she was just trying to get my attention. She wasn't fucking with me. She didn't know. Like it was just, but yeah, I had the opposite problem. I didn't have some stampede of hotties trying to get with me, but I had a couple of chicks every year or two that like really were interested and did more than they needed to do for any normal dude, and I was just so clueless.
Well, and there's where Hot Wheels, and so Phil, without divulging too much information, Phil's one of the few men I know that's choosing to maintain a level of abstinence prior to getting married, right? Because it's a belief of his, and I've heard a lot more young men say to me over time that they're not interested in just sleeping around just because of the absurdity of it, right? The risk. So, Hot Wheels, you're the young guy. You're only on the spot for a minute.
I mean, what are you asking?
What is it like being
Maybe I can direct this because I wrote like to break down, like, so for Hot Wheels. Here's my question for you. This will start it. So, in your experience with the girls of your age, because I'm not going to know anything about this, what do you think, or like, yeah, what's your experience? What do those women want in like their ideal? Well, not their ideal guy, because that's like everyone's ideal is going to be crazy. What are they picking? I guess is what do you see them picking?
Not me.
Don't take that harsh.
Yeah, don't seriously.
Between 30 and 50 is
that's
take off.
All right.
That's go ahead.
So, I have a girlfriend, right? Um, but the difference between her picking me or me picking her, however it went, um, most people that get together in high school they're doing it because it's hard to say. I guess the easy way to put it is like girls like guys that are more popular than other guys like me. I don't put myself out there. I don't like do stuff for attention. I kind of just do my own thing. And
Like, is it like an introvert extrovert sort of thing?
kind of, I can be an extrovert. I'm an extrovert with adults, not so much kids because kids my age I think a lot of them are really dumb, and the amount of time they spend on technology and phones and stuff. Just recently I was like, man, I'm falling into this, so I kind of like took a step back, looked at myself, and I was like, what can I do to distance myself from that and be better, like be a better version of myself, so that I'm not ending up like all these other kids who do stuff for attention and who all they care about is girls. They don't care about their school grades. They don't care about how people see them, stuff like that. I mean, it's
Would it be fair to be calling it kind of like clout chasing?
yeah, yeah.
I'm trying to keep myself hip with some of the you know, the neologisms of the Zoomers and all that. I watch YouTube breakdown of TikTok content. I kind of consider myself a student, a
Oh
permanent
god, yeah.
student of language. So
And it's not
it's
only
clout chasing. I find I actually like that phrase because it seems to capture a lot of what's going on today.
kids that are being addicted to like TikTok and stuff like that. It's also adults. I've seen it with family members of mine. My dad even, you know, uh, in the summertime before he had TikTok, he'd be doing stuff outside, getting stuff done around the house, and now, when he's got free time after he comes home from work, he just puts in his headphones, sits on the couch, and looks at TikTok for like 2 or 3 hours. It's ridiculous.
2 to 3 hours of 10 to 30 second clips.
But
I
that's what
mean,
keeps you roped in because it's all new
yeah,
content. It's fresh. What do they call it? Stimulation.
yeah. It's like 10 to 30 seconds. You're getting a dopamine spike. Every 10 to 30 seconds, you're getting some kind of there's like a mini narrative in each clip, and you're getting there's a payoff. And yeah, I TikTok is Nightscape is always sending me
Have you even
TikToks,
looked
and
into
I
like
don't.
not only TikTok's terms of service, but Instagram, Facebook?
Oh yeah, the terms of service are
Instagram and
absurd.
Facebook's TOS got updated a few months ago. It was like 6 months ago, and that update, oh, it was crazy. TikTok is flat out like all they collect an insane amount of data, and it all goes to the CCP. So I mean, anyone who has TikTok on their phone, I'm just like, well, have fun spying for China because that's what you're doing.
I'll join back in this in a second. We got lunch ready, so
Yeah,
maybe
sure.
10 minutes.
Well, we'll
Oh,
catch you in a bit.
I thought like one of the big questions is, in terms of like what's a good mate. One of the things you could immediately do is kind of bifurcate the question into what do women want in men, and what do men think women want in men that they don't.
Well,
Because to
so
me, that's kind of
competency.
like an interesting question where you get a lot of. Seems like there's a lot of guys who um, you just go right to the obvious example of like Andrew Tate, where he has a lot of very traditionally masculine qualities and in good supply. But they're taken kind of to the extreme, and then there are some other masculine qualities that he seems to like utterly lack and actually be totally ignorant of, such as being like reasonable.
Conscientious.
Well, I think he's conscientious, because conscientiousness is like hardworking, but maybe you mean ethical, because I don't think his ethics and morality. I don't think they exist. If they exist, I think they exist like as a post hoc rationalization for all the things he's already decided to do for other reasons. I don't think he consults his morality before he makes a decision. I think he makes decisions and then afterwards figures out how to justify it. You know what I mean?
Well, so and that goes back to being
And I
self-centered.
don't think that's what a woman would
No.
want in
So
a man, because that's not empathic. That's a man like that is not gonna like get up from the couch to get something from the fridge and then say to his woman, "Hey, while I'm up, do you want something?" I doubt Andrew Tate's ever done that once in his life. I mean, I doubt it would occur to him. To him, it's like, no, you serve me. You're subordinate to me. And I'm just like, yeah, it's one-sided subordination ideas in relationships that some people have. Like, it doesn't even work that way in sub-dom relationships. Sub-dom relationships, the subordination, if anything, it's going the other way that you think. So I mean, but there's certainly a balance. So it's just like guys like Andrew Tate talk about, like, they exhibit many masculine virtues far better than I ever will. Andrew Tate is very capable of enhanced levels of violence. He can defend himself and others profoundly well.
Well, he was
Much
a
better
fighter.
than me. Well, he's like a world champion kickboxer. He knows how to use guns. Like, yeah, he's a very dangerous male. But he's got it under control. He's not some crazy person. He's not going to jail for anything violence.
Well, look at Joe Rogan.
He's going to jail for lacking morality.
Well, yeah, look at Joe Rogan. My camera's not going to work. It's just going to fail for some reason. But
Which
Just-
is quite interesting.
just-
in
just-
itself.
Well, and I
Yours
think
froze
that's
too, Phil.
An interesting one to me, yeah. No, it's just you. I think we're still good. It's just you.
okay, is mine unfrozen?
Yeah, and we can hear you just fine. We just
Okay.
can't see your camera.
Let me try the camera one more time. If it works, great. If not, I'll turn it. If it doesn't work, I'll just turn it off. There's no point in messing with it. It's not messing with it. So, you're frozen now.
Destiny.
Oh, there you are. So, like,
Oh, you're just hang on. Stop talking. You're just catching up with us. Just give it a second here. You had like a massive lag spike.
okay, so that's probably fixed now. Is that better?
Yeah, you seem in sync with us now. Just all of a sudden, a bunch of your stuff came through. It was like catching up with us.
Okay. So what I was gonna say, part of the thing, right, and I don't think you're wrong in wanting to look at this from a trait point of view, but the thing with Andrew Tate is he doesn't have the balancing traits. One of the things that my wife
Yeah.
will talk about with me is that, and you mentioned as well, that I'm reasonable, right? So
Calling Andrew Tate unbalanced, I think, is a really fair analysis of his masculinity. He has tons of masculinity in some areas, but then none of it in others.
he does. So if you look at what makes a relationship good, or what makes a marriage good, or why my wife constitutes me as a good mate, is that when she brings something to my attention, if it's something that I can address or I feel needs to be addressed, I will. I don't operate on the idea that my wife is not having my best interest at hand, because she does, right? If you don't believe your wife has your best interest at heart, you married the wrong person. So that's part of it too. It's like,
Well,
but-
let's compare that to Andrew Tate. So here's a question. Like, I know the
He
answer.
u-
Well, I think we all do. Do you think Andrew Tate? So, like, when your wife comes to you with a concern or whatever, you take it seriously because you trust that she has your best interests in mind. She's not going to be malevolent, so you don't have to subject it to the usual. Like, if a stranger came to you with a concern, you'd have a bunch of questions and you'd want to validate it. But from your wife, you trust her, so you're not suspicious that she's malevolent or that she's trying to trick you. Do you think Andrew Tate can say the same about
Oh, no.
any of his girlfriends?
No.
No, he doesn't trust them.
he views women as
He doesn't
a
trust them at
resource.
all.
He views them
Well,
as
yeah,
a
like,
resource.
there's no equality. He doesn't even view them as equals.
No.
And he sure as heck doesn't trust them. So I don't know if Andrew Tate even has, like, the capacity to have a conventional monogamous relationship between different but equal people.
Right.
Because that's what men and women are. We're different, but in the sense of a relationship, our rights and responsibilities should be different but equal.
Your wife should multiply you, not become a burden.
Oh, dude. So let me build on that because you're so right. So I had to break off a long-standing friendship I've had with a woman who's, I think she's you're like 48, right? Yeah, she's like your age. And so she, through no fault of her own, she got married at 19 to a guy 10 years older than her who was a rising star chef, eventually became a 5-star chef, cooked for the Queen that was back in England. They moved to Canada, had kids, and he all of a sudden, so fast forward like 20 years later, so she's 39, and he's 49. He comes down with a 1 in like 100 million cancer that has nothing to do with what he's done. He was a smoker, and ironically, his lungs were the healthiest part of his body when he died. If God exists, he has one fierce sense of humor. And he got like a cancer that would be on a House episode.
Right.
And watching him die, because I was really close with their family. I had dinner with them every week. And because Kate and I met in college because we were like the only 2 adult students in this psych class of 30 kids. And then there's the 2 of us who have actually, we're like 10 years older than everyone else. So we just automatically bonded. And she's really cool. And it was never any like romantic thing between us. She was married. Mark's an absolute stud, 6'4", fucking alpha male all the way. I love Mark. Watching him wither away and die to cancer was just, I spoke at his funeral. Anyways, I had to push her away finally because she she eventually finished her education, um, and became a social worker. I edited all of her papers. I have read her material. Like that's so even back then, that social work stuff, crazy leftist nonsense, identity politics all the way, and it just makes you weak. And she went from being this lioness, like she's like 6 foot Amazon woman too, just doesn't take shit from anyone. She went from just being this lioness when she had Mark by her side to she was going out, like she got played around by some Irish F-boy who told her that he wasn't into monogamy, and she still fell in love with them. And both of her kids are complete, like, failure to launches. They're in their late 20s and they still live at home with her. They both have mental conditions. And they're comforting her as she cries on their shoulders. And then she started hitting on me, despite the fact that I made it abundantly clear that was never going to be a thing. And she just kept pressing it, and finally accepted that. Went back to the boys, like on the dating websites. And I finally got into this argument with her where I was trying to make her understand, like, at a bare minimum. And the phrase I used that ended up being kind of the straw that it was the crux of everything. I said basically what you said. I said, a woman should make a man's life easier, like better, so more complicated, but overall easier, not more difficult.
And they do.
And
a good woman does.
Yeah, exactly. And to me, I thought that was self-evident. I thought that was obvious because I just have to reference my own mother and what she's doing with my millionaire stepdad and why he loves her to death. And my mom doesn't even understand. Like, if you ask my mom, what are all the things that my stepdad values in you that, like, provide your side of the value to the relationship, she wouldn't be able to tell you. Like, I guarantee it. But it's just because it's natural. It's just that's who she is. It's not some performance where she has to think about it, where she can write it down. It's just who she is. And Kate could not accept that. She couldn't accept that her. And I said, like, it's not some sexist thing. It goes both ways. The man should make your life, like, it's easy for women to understand how a man coming into your life as a single mother with 2 kids and I should say a single widow. I mean, she did everything right. It's not her fault and it's not Mark's fault either. It was just one of those, it's like getting hit by lightning. It's just totally random. So she did everything right. She's not one of these, I should say, single widow, because I think there's a categorical difference there.
Oh, I agree.
But she just couldn't handle that, like, now, yes, through no fault of her own, but that doesn't change it doesn't change the reality that now you are a single mom. Like, she wouldn't even accept the idea that she turned into one of those people where you ask her, what do you bring to the table? She says, I am the table. She basically turned into that. And it was just a combination of that and her consistently telling me about the thing that really did me was she kept telling me about her, like, crying over getting her heart broken by these obvious F-boys, and then her own children having to console her. I was just like, I don't need that visual. I don't.
Well,
I'm not interested in being. And she kept wanting to be around me physically. Like, she's like, oh, let's meet up in person. It's like, so we could do what? Do the thing that we're doing now over the phone? Like, we live at opposite ends of the city. It'll take hours to coordinate this. For what? I was so suspicious. I'm like, no, you just want to try and seduce me. Like, no, it's not going to happen.
Well, the thing about it is she doesn't understand the value proposition. And I want to circle back, kind of interesting.
She's bought, or she understands it, but I think she's bought into this idea that women bring value to a relationship just by being, just by existing. It's like, you've got me now, I'm your woman, you get to say that. That's all the value. And
It's not.
no,
So
no,
let's.
that's preposterous.
So if you
Yes,
take, I'm going to take my wife because that's the person I have the most knowledge on, right? So I've been married since 2015, and I was single for a decade before that, which is interesting to go through that period of time.
Hey-o.
You know,
I'm on year 7. No, year 6. Year
all right.
6.
So, but the thing was, I was like, dude, I'll never get married again because I understood that I could get anything I wanted from a woman without having to give her any level of commitment. Okay? Because I realized that men over time become more valuable than women over time. And that's one of the things that I don't think Hot Wheels quite gets yet is that right now your selection of mate is geographically limited, right? Meaning the people that are in your school. But what's going to change is once you get out of high school and whether you go in the military, go to college, or join the workforce, you will become exposed to a larger group of women that are not going to judge you from when you were 12, that won't have any understanding of when you have pimples. They're not going to
Well,
know
and I
that,
mean,
right,
he can understand it intellectually,
right.
but it's like I understood it intellectually when I was in my late teens. But
High
it's,
school doesn't matter.
well, but it's not like understanding it as an idea. I'm going to be more attractive in my 30s and 40s.
Oh, yeah.
Like
By a
it's,
lot.
there's the idea, but then when you actually get into your 30s and 40s, you actually have your career fully in swing. Like, oh man,
Maybe.
it is. It's so the reality is so much better than the idea. Because I remember how I thought I didn't find the idea very comforting when I felt like I was going to be a virgin forever at 19, and blah blah blah. I couldn't get a girl to look at me because I didn't understand that there were girls interested in me. I was just too clueless. Like, I knew theoretically, oh, I'll get, my chances will get better as I'll get older. But at the time, that didn't make me feel that.
But what I think the,
It does get better, but
yeah,
once you get there, you really understand it. Like, oh shit, just like, I mean, like I rate myself like a 5, maybe a 6 on a good day, just because I'm over 6 feet and I'm not fat. But when I actually like put on a leather jacket, put on a toque to cover up the pattern baldness, and just kind of like keep my jaw square, let my beard grow out a little longer, and just look kind of just like vaguely like resting bitch face, I noticed like on the bus, I actually get looks from women now, and it's funny, and it's just because you get a little gray in the beard, you get a bit older, you learn how to dress yourself, and you get a bit of confidence, and honestly not giving an F about any woman's opinion around you does make you more attractive, as long as that doesn't mean that you're like dressing like a slob. If you're still taking care of yourself and dressing well, and you just honestly don't really care about any woman around you, it's amazing how much more attractive that makes you to them.
it's called competency. So you're
Well, they
surmising.
assume that your disinterest, like they see that you're relatively put together, and then they assume, I think, like in some subconscious way, that your disinterest means that, like,
You don't
that
need
your
them.
bar, yeah, that your bar, that A, you don't need them, or B, that your bar is pretty high, and maybe they don't meet it, which can be a bit of a challenge. And women, like men, like a challenge. They just
Oh
like
yeah,
it in a different way.
in as much as men want to swing up, right? Women also want to swing up. And I was listening to
I don't think
Pearl.
men want to swing up, though. I mean,
Okay,
men,
no
like
guy
Pearl
doesn't
talks
want.
about it as men generally swing down.
I disagree with that because I went after the most
Look at
attractive.
Ronaldo,
I know.
Cristiano Ronaldo, right now. So if we're going to talk about, sorry, Andrew Tate, you're not top G. You're not top G. You're in jail. Top G is Cristiano Ronaldo, who is worth, I think, over $1 billion, who is, I mean, looks like an Adonis. I'm sorry, no homo, but that man is an 11 plus. one of the most famous men on the planet. Seems like a genuinely nice guy. He is playing soccer in Saudi Arabia right now with his unmarried girlfriend, cohabitating, and Saudi Arabia has bent that's a no-no. They're an Islamic country. You can't cohabitate with a woman unless you're married to her. And they have bent that law just for him to play soccer. And guess who he's with? He is with a woman who was working a checkout at a Gucci store. She was a counter chick. And he's made a kid with her now. They're making a family. I think after he spoke with Jordan Peterson about a year ago, because I think Ronaldo was in that situation. You can see it where it's like, I'm at the top of the world. Like, there isn't really anything. Like, what else is there for Cristiano Ronaldo to do? I mean, and he spoke. I think he was a bit lost. He spoke with Peterson. Peterson flew out and spent a weekend with him, and they haven't really spoken about what they talked about. But it's going to be Peterson just basically doing that course that he runs, where it's like, well, let's talk about what your dreams are. And anyways, yeah, but that is a counter chick, a chick working a counter at a Gucci store, and the most sought after, hottest man on the planet, most sought after bachelor. Yeah, that's who he's with. George Clooney dated a cocktail waitress for years.
Well, what I mean by up, right, and that's, I'm going to phrase it this way. So, what I think most aptly applies to Cristiano, myself, and most men who choose what would be constituted as a unusual mate would be they bring something to the table that we don't have, and they offer it in a manner that doesn't have a prerequisite. Like when I said to Sandy, it was fun. It's like I said, we should live together. She's like, no. I'm like, why? And she's like, well, because we're not married, and I'm not going to show my daughters that's what you do. And it was like, I left that night arguing with myself, thinking, I'm not going to walk away from this relationship. And I said I'd never get married again. But this woman offers me something that I can't replace. She loves me without condition. And she
put a condition on it, though. She has standards, right?
Well, that's the thing, right? And that's where I'm saying to being a good mate.
My mom refused the millionaire lawyer 3 times over 3 years before she finally agreed to a date with him. And my mom is a registered nurse. She's not money. She doesn't come from money. She comes from nowhere like me. So, but it didn't matter because she had she wasn't ready to date. She wasn't dating anyone, and she wasn't going to make an exception for Mr. Millionaire Hotshot Lawyer. Didn't matter that he had money and status and clout. Didn't matter. She wasn't ready to date, so she told him no. And that kept him interested because he's not a man that hears no a lot. Pretty much ever. The only one he hears no from is my mom.
Well, and I think the thing with Cristiano is that he didn't want a woman that wanted him because of who he was as Cristiano, but he wanted somebody that wanted the best for Cristiano, whatever that looked like, right?
And how do you tell? That's from his perspective.
How do you tell, right? Because she
most wanted man.
Because she was a checkout artist. Because she was a cashier, and he met her. Yes.
He ran into her. She didn't slide into his DMs.
Right.
She didn't bump into him at a whatever. No, he just ran into her.
And she was attractive to him.
Yeah, and she was nice to him. She probably recognized him.
She probably didn't. It was probably that she didn't recognize him.
If she didn't, that would be perfect. Because that would be the best. Yeah, I agree. If she didn't recognize him, he probably fell head over heels right then and there. Just
she didn't know who she was. Oh, you're so cute.
And she would have just been treating him a bit professionally, a bit standoffish, oh yeah, he's a hunky guy, but you work in a Gucci store, you've seen hunky guys before, you're not gonna, make a fool of yourself for that. If you don't recognize him, as Ronaldo, then then that's she might have accidentally just done the perfect thing, which is just like, just another guy. Like, yeah, you're nice looking, but whatever.
So that's an interesting thought, and I think it's quite true. And I also think that I want to get back to our topic, which what makes a male, because we've been discussing a lot
Yeah, we
around.
can't be Ronaldo. Like, none of
Right.
us are going to be
So
Ronaldo. He's in a
it,
pretty unique situation.
right. So we're not going to have the ability to walk into a room and hope somebody
He
doesn't
has
recognize
pre-selection.
us.
Pre-selection is a thing where, and it makes perfect sense, where if lots of other women want a guy, that makes the guy more attractive to all other women.
Right.
It's if a man is now some women will lie about it. I remember back in the day when Fight Club came out, and there were some girls I worked with at the restaurant at the IHOP who said that they weren't attracted to Brad Pitt's body, and I was like, but the way they said it, I was like, you just mean that that's not your ideal. You'd still take it. Like, you'd still be all over it. You wouldn't have a problem with that. It's just like you like a more Jason Momoa, like bigger type rather than the leaner, ripped type. Like, I get that, but you'd still be all over that. You'd be riding that, and they eventually would all agree, like, well, yeah, he's still good looking. And I'm like, yeah. And the fact that all other women recognize him, know him, want him, and if you get him, they're all jealous of you. That might have, because I used to, when women say they don't dress for men, I used to think that was hot nonsense. I thought, like, it made no sense to me.
Oh, they dress for
that
women.
could possibly be true. Now I'm thoroughly convinced. No, they're right. They dress for women. Women, I think, compete with each other. I don't want to compare it. I think there's a perception that women don't compete with each other with the same intensity that men compete with each other, and I think they do. I think it's just the competitions are very different from how men compete. So that's gonna be engaging the boxing competition.
Yeah.
But I think I think they really do dress for women, and a way you can, like, dress isn't just about what you have on.
It's how
Like,
you.
your whole,
It's how you carry yourself.
well, and it's everything in the Instagram photo, including if like what kind of man that you secure as a woman is so, like, that's kind of the ultimate status. If you can secure a top man and he's not going anywhere and he's not cheating on you and everyone knows it, it doesn't really, not a lot else matters as the woman. Like, you've won. Whatever you did, it worked. And like,
Well,
away
that's
you go.
so part of what I think makes a good mate, because I want to actually keep on our topic a little bit, is
It has to be a man that at least a few other women want. None of us are going to be as like Ronaldo.
right.
But
But how do
no
you make
woman
yourself
wants a
desirable,
man-
right?
Yeah, no woman wants a man that no other woman wants.
So that means you have to be appealing to the social group, right? So that's where that loner individual, as it were, that is antisocial, has challenges finding a mate, is they are not desirable by other women. So there's a certain, there's like that popular kid in school that everybody wants
There's
to
like a
date.
threshold you have to meet.
Right. Yeah, it's like I saw a thing, a red flag. If a guy doesn't have any friends, that's a red flag, right? I saw this on some woman's site. If a guy doesn't have at least 2 or 3 friends, there's a reason that he doesn't have friends, right? That's a flag for women. And I was like, and that's an interesting idea that if a guy doesn't have friends, that it doesn't make him an attractive mate. And I would disagree with that simply because I know, like, Chris doesn't have a
Has
shitload of friends.
No friends.
Well,
I think we would want to be, because introverts
have
introverted
selective
people and highly intelligent people, and I believe introversion is positively correlated with IQ. You are more likely to be intelligent the more introverted you are. Those two things together both go with having fewer friends, but the friends that you do have tend to be really firm, like long-term for life friendships. So I would say it's not about having, like, the key would be you'd want to be specific with the language. If the guy has 0 friends, massive red. That guy, if a guy has zero friends, like that's like Elliot Rogers territory. You know, I'd be like, what's up with him then? Because even the bullied, picked on, nerdy kids, they still like. There's other kids that are
There
in
were
that
other
position
nerds.
that they can bond with.
Yeah, there were other nerds that got all beat up together and they all sat at the same table. You know?
Yeah, you don't have to be alone in your condition. There are other people suffering with you. It's like,
Right. Whether the suffering is being popular or the suffering is being unpopular, right? You suffer the
there are
same.
cliques. You can find people like it's so the kids that like if you find out that a guy has absolutely no friends, that's concerning. If he has no friends but he has close relations with his immediate and extended family though, and is social with them, like, or he's social like religiously with his church group or something, he just doesn't like, he just kind of has his own hobbies and doesn't like go out and hang out, like that's okay. But I think in the conventional sense, yeah, it's a bit of a red flag. And I think from a woman's perspective, if a man has no friends, what are the odds that he's going to be well socialized? I think one of the things that women want from their man, from a good mate, is they want a man. Obviously, they want a man that can defend them physically. I think everyone knows that. But I think they also want a man who can, like, defend them, or at least not embarrass them socially, using his words and social skills. And if a man has no friends, what are the odds that that guy's going to be adept in social situations? He could be, but you
Not
play
likely.
the percentages, right? And it's not likely, I don't think. So I would say that being able to, it doesn't mean that you need to be some conversational dominant like me. It doesn't mean that you need to have some massive vocabulary and just put clever sentences together. It means that you, because I've known guys that can be the most attractive guy in a room, only saying, a handful of sentences, but they just pick the right moment and they say the right thing at the right time. And then because they haven't said that much elsewhere, it
Well,
gives what
there's
they say
a
more
Bible
impact. So it's
verse.
like
Yeah.
every guy can find a way to look good and not only not embarrass your woman, but actually kind of
Elevate.
like up her because of your own game in a social situation. It doesn't mean you have to be the person talking the most. It just means that when you speak, what you say
Matters.
It needs to have some impact. It
So,
needs to be well chosen.
and that goes to a fool. There's a Bible verse that says, "A fool when silent is deemed wise, and when he opens his mouth, he removes all doubt." Right. So that's been around for a very long time, and that's where my grandfather used to say to me as a boy, and that stuck with me. He goes, "Be the last one to speak," and I was like, "Well, why?" And he's like, "Because then you get the benefit of hearing everybody else in the room, and then you get to make a better statement because you have more data, right?"
And you've seen the mistakes, you've seen what they've tried, what didn't work.
Correct.
And people tend to remember the last thing said.
Basically. So, and that goes back to, and I'm attempting like hell to keep us on topic, because I don't.
Well, we are. We're talking about good mate attributes, and one of them definitely is to
Social,
be able to
have
navigate,
social skills.
Yeah, to navigate social situations in a way where your woman feels that she can like take you out to a pub and you can interact with some random stranger couples, and you're not going to embarrass her and you're going to make her look good.
That's true. Now,
and to be fair, and I think that goes the other way as well. I think men when we take our women out for a night on the town, we want them to make us look good too. I don't.
And that's aesthetics, though. That's aesthetics.
It's going to be in different ways, but I think the desire is and the duty. I would say the duty on each partner to meet that is the same. So it's not sexist. How each sex accomplishes that will be different, but the duty to each partner to do it is the same. So
I would agree.
Fair.
So
I like things to be fair
Hot Wheels.
Like different but fair is what men and women are. So I like finding that pattern where I can.
So let me ask you a question. Your current girlfriend
I'll be
is
back in a
young.
second here.
All right, is younger or older than you?
Gotta feed the cat.
Sorry, what?
Is your current girlfriend younger or older than you?
Older.
By how long?
A year.
So not really one grade.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna make a statement, and then I'll ask. I want your opinion on the statement. So the the statement I believe is that in youth, and at least this has been my experience, you learn what you don't want dating, right? When you're dating at 16, 17, 18 years old, you're visually chosen to somebody generally, right?
Yeah.
You look at them and go, okay, she's hot, or she has a attribute. She's a redhead. She's a blonde. There's something about her that gets your attention. And then when we start talking to them, we begin to look at who they are and do we have something we can talk about. But for the most part, the only thing a girl has to do to keep our attention is be interested in us. Not necessarily be interesting themselves, but interested in us. And I think that's really the part that men miss, is that what we're really in search of is a woman that is interested in us as a person. And my wife is that way for me. And that's one of the things that, I couldn't find and hadn't found for 45 years, was a woman that genuinely had an interest in me. And it didn't care what I was doing. She had the interest in whatever it was. Like, I rode motorcycles, I shoot guns, and she would go ride with me and she'd go shoot with me. I played video games, so she learned a video game. And, like, my wife was interested in me, not necessarily interested in what I had, what I could give her. She found me interesting. So I'm curious if your experience with girls at 16, 17, when you got past the visual, like, okay, she's hot, and now will she talk to me, and she's talking to you, is she more, have you noticed, is she interested more in just you? So she's basically amenable to anything you want to do, or is she interested in having a boyfriend, and then she treats you as, okay, now you are her guy. So she walks around, oh, I'm with my boyfriend. And girls have that at a certain age want to be coupled, and that's their status, to have the right guy, as it were. But as you're younger than her, I would question that, because you're not a grade above her. So there's obviously something that you possess that has her attention, that allows her to look at a younger classmate as a love interest.
So I think there's two things. She's interested in me, right? Not she doesn't care about like the status of having somebody. But she also sees potential in me because I get decent grades. I have my future like planned out, and I have backup plans on like if this doesn't work, well I'm gonna do this instead, and if that doesn't work, I'm gonna do this instead. And I've discussed this stuff with her, and it all sounds good to me. So I think
That all sounds good, yeah, and it should. That sounds good because, like in the old days, the way it was a girl would do exactly what it sounds like she's doing, which is she'd suss out a guy her own age, maybe a bit older, but not much. It was usually within 5 years, and like would see would figure out if he had potential, and if he had potential, long term good potential, she'd stick with him. And that way, when he hits his peak and surpasses her, he's going to remember that
She was
she's
there
more
at the beginning.
that she's helped him build his brand. Yeah, and that's such a good system. I mean, it works so well. So many great. That's why that saying, "Every great man has a great woman behind him." It's just like, yeah, because that system really works. So I hope that's what you got. It sounds like it.
and recognize that women will behave in the manner in which you treat them. That is the
Depends on the
thing.
woman. I mean,
I've
I've
so
had I've had some interesting girlfriends. Let's put it that
ML,
way.
I'm Chris. As much as I love you and you've been my friend for a long time, um, you are not a good example for the average. Okay, you
No, I'm
are
not
not the
joking.
mean in any way, shape, or form. I would be more closer akin to the mean than you. Um,
That last girl I dated was actually pretty. I think pretty.
Normal.
Um, well, I've been paying attention to red pill stuff and MGTOW and all of that. Not because I'm a part of it. I don't join movements. I don't align myself with things like that. But they make funny content, and um, some of it I agree with, and the stuff I disagree with makes me think. So blah blah blah. But that last girl I dated was like, well, I mean, she was 34. She made more money than me. She was more attractive than me. I'd put her at a 6 plus, maybe a 7. Um, and like, and she really liked me, but yeah, it took me about 2 months to notice, like, oh, you're a dude. Like everything about the red pill content made so much more set. Like I dated her, then I went and found the red pill stuff because I was so flabbergasted by my experience with her. I was just like, it's like everything about her was female on the outside, but all of her behavior and mannerisms and the way she thought and talked and everything else, it was like a conventional. It was like a dude, not a smart man, like a dude, bro. She gave me a lift home. This is a 34-year-old divorced professional woman who makes six figures. She has a hot little sports car because her idol is Clarice Starling from Silence of the Lambs and Hannibal. Um, a high IQ woman. It makes sense that it would be. And we're on the highway because she wants to give me a lift home to show off her sports car. And she tries to drag race a couple of guys in a Mustang. And she's seriously trying to drag race them. She's like mad dogging them, seeing past me in the passenger side and yelling at them. And I don't think they ever picked up. And she just roared off and then was kind of looking at me to see if I was impressed. And I'm just like, do you not get that? Like, if you were a 20-year-old dude and I was a 20-year-old dude in that context, I'd be like, yeah, a bunch of pussies, they wouldn't race us. But I'm a 42-year-old white collar guy who's never been married, who's still looking for love, and you're a 34-year-old divorced woman who is a professional, and you're giving me a lift home, and you're trying to drag race guys on the highway. Like it's so,
She doesn't
and that was
understand what men want. She has no
she didn't
idea.
she didn't understand, and she not only did she not understand what men want, I don't think she had, because she wasn't happy. I mean, she was in therapy. 2 weeks in, she tells me that she had been raped at 8 years old by her uncle. 2 weeks in, I didn't ask. Well, I didn't ask anything even close to that. No, that just comes out quick with these girls. And again, it was like I thought it was such an anomaly. Then I hopped on YouTube. This is about 2 years ago.
Hmm.
I hopped on YouTube because I never slept with her. I never touched her. I was like, no, like the crazy coming off of her was so strong. Um, and I found that a lot of this content was describing a type of woman that, like, the template fit over her exactly. I was like, oh my, like just the idea of a masculinized woman. And I was like, that's
Well,
her.
and
She
that's
wasn't
and that's the
feminine
problem. It's
at
men.
all, except that she looked like a little hottie. But all of her, it was like one of those Disney movies where they swap in the soul of a dude, and it's just so weird. But apparently, there's a lot of that now.
I can't give much input on that, but from what I've seen, divorced women, they have a desire to be like appealing, and maybe they thought that you would enjoy drag racing or something like that because
Well,
they
I
saw you as a guy who she thinks all guys would like this or all guys would like that, and she would
Like a
show that to them.
simplistic conception of what guys like. That would
Yeah.
like. There's no way that she has a
She
sophisticated understanding of what guys like. So
well,
all the way, yeah.
she thinks that men want to do with boobs.
Well, her,
Well, and that's not the
she's
case
a
though.
high IQ woman. She's a super leftist. She writes, like she has a job writing for the government. Like she talked mad game about respecting boundaries and about and consent and this and that. And she sought me out on Match.com. I thought maybe if a paywall's in front of it, that gets rid of the crazies and it was like my last shot at online dating. I was like, I'll try paying for it, and it just
That's
gets you a
one thing.
different
That's
kind
one
of crazy.
thing that I feel like has kind of like ruined dating nowadays. Like I said, again, I'm 15. I don't have much input on this, but from my perspective, online dating doesn't seem to really work out. I think you have a way better shot at finding somebody that you genuinely like if you can meet them in person and have like a normal conversation. Because online, I mean, there's catfishes. Not only that, but they can make themselves seem as somebody that they aren't. So did you meet that girl? Yeah, you said you met that girl on Match.com.
Yeah, and it was funny because one of the things you learn, you'll learn it accidentally, or you can learn it by listening to people doing the research. And there is some, like, they have published some of the data, but what those online dating places do is, I've never photographed well, and I've never put much effort into taking a good picture. So, like, they have an algorithm that basically judges your attractiveness level based on your profile picture, and it puts you in tranches. It puts you in categories. And so it's obvious. Like, I remember going through Match, and I went through thousands of profiles until it got to the end with the search criteria I had, like 25 miles away from me and within like a 10-year age range. And I literally looked through every single profile, and there wasn't a single woman I was even remotely attracted to. And I'm like, where are the hotties? Then all of a sudden, because I didn't know back then, they had put me in a lower category. I'm never going to see the hotties because the system has judged me as being lower attractive, so it's going to match me only with other lower attractives.
That's BS.
It runs in the background. They don't tell you about it, but boy, geez, you figure it out. You figure it out subconsciously. Then if you think about it, it makes sense. Then you read articles about it and see the data, and it's like, I knew. Of course they do. So she messaged me because she was in a higher bracket. I never saw her. She messaged me. She saw mine because the hires can look down, but the downs can't look up. Of course. So
Hey Phil, I'm going to interrupt you for a
messaged me.
minute, Chris.
Yeah, go ahead.
Phil, you are the
Yes.
mid-20 outlier in this conversation. I'm the married guy with the good relationship. We got the young guy that's just figured it out, and Chris, we'll just call him Chris.
I just say I'm a monk.
Yeah, he's our monk. So, what does the dating scene look like for 25-year-olds? Being male, right? So, I want your take on what do you think makes a
Well,
good
being
partner.
male and you're successful. So yeah.
Successful is relative.
To other
people
men
see it.
your age sound more successful. At your age, I didn't have much money. I didn't have
Fair.
multiple companies.
Well, I don't have much money either.
Okay,
Yeah,
fair, yeah, but
you
you
know.
have equity, right?
Right. In terms of dating, in my perspective, I see it more as a waste of time because it's complicated, not because it is something that there is no value in, because there is definitive value. And I don't date excessively, I would say, or just date in general, because I know the time commitment, that an emotional commitment there, and so I just don't. I don't worry about it, and I'd rather spend that time working and then analyzing, see if there's someone that meets the basic criteria. I'm gonna make compromise, but if I see somebody that I like, and there's a gal that I've got my eye on that, not necessarily that I'd say probably 8 months, 8 months out, um, in terms of time commitment. And it's not me saying she's a good fit for me. It is a question of, am I a good fit for her? Because I like her. And then adjust where I'm standing so that I fit her criteria, is my perspective.
I think a lot of it, I think approach is going to be different depending on the kind of guy you are too, depending on your circumstances. You know, it's my, I remember I did the 16 personalities thing. Basically it's a kind of a,
Myers-Briggs.
it's Myers-Briggs. Yeah. You know, so there's not tons of validity to it, but it's interesting. I find it like as a descriptive.
It gives you a very good understanding of how you view yourself. That's what it does. Because
Well, yeah, because
it
it's
gives-
self-reporting.
correct.
It
So
would
it
be-
it tells you how you view yourself in the world, not how the world actually views you.
It would actually be interesting. You know, there's nothing to say that you can't use that tool, but have others.
Yes. I've
do
already
it
had that
for
thought. Mhm.
You, yeah, I'd be interested to have others do. Oh man, I bet I would
That's-
come out the same. I bet others would rate me how I rate myself.
It is.
I would bet.
And you're mentioning something on how people, having other peer groups, people you would deem as equal, rate you, right? There's a group that I'm part of that does exactly that, professionally and personally, and it's very, very effective. Highly recommend finding people that are equal to you, not necessarily same age, same demographic, but people you would deem, these people think the same way I think, in the same vein that I think, and I trust their perspective 100%. Find those people.
Yeah, because those people are also going to be the ones, I think, by virtue of being those things, there's going to be a bunch of things that they're unlikely to be as well, like emotionally draining. They're unlikely to be that if they're all those
Correct.
positive things. And yeah, so it's definitely a good idea. I think you should start doing that at a young age, because if you go the route I did, I mean, when I got out of UBC, I had over 1,000 friends on my Facebook. I was quite the social butterfly. And now I have 17 friends on my completely locked down Facebook with a picture of me and inaccurate data. Because I got a bit paranoid. And I'm much happier. I'm happier with 17 Facebook friends than I ever was with 1,000.
I'm going to kind of close this up for the recording aspect of it. And then if you want to continue to talk, I have a person in my house I got to deal with.
No, I'm all good too. I need to go and eat.
So
I think we got a little bit of work done, but
I think we did.
Just a good conversation.
But here's the thing that I think we should take away from this, and what it means to be a good mate is to have a balance between the masculine traits and the things that counteract the negativity of being male, right? Of being masculine. It's understanding what it means to put somebody else before you, right? And realize that being a good mate is realizing that you multiply each other. It isn't that one makes you better. It's the converse. You make each other better, because when you pursue what the other person wants to be in the context of how can I help you be the best version of you that you want to be, you end up putting yourself in a position to where you're helping each other grow versus preventing it. So.
Well, and don't be afraid to be a man. I mean,
Fact.
These days more than ever, my closing statement would be, don't be afraid to exhibit strong masculine positive traits, because those traits are, people can sneer at you if you wear a leather jacket and ride a motorbike. But if you look good in that leather jacket and you ride that motorbike well, it's going to get you chicks. Like, it's because those, at college and university, I saw it over and over. You'd see these, it's such a cliche, short-haired little feminist chick in class, standing up saying, I don't need no man, talking all this mad game. And then you see, it's like, who's that chick's boyfriend? And you see who her boyfriend is. It's not a guy who goes to the college. Or if he is, he's on the football team. Like, he has a motorbike, and she gets on the back, and he doesn't say please. Like, it's just, so you don't want to be Andrew Tate. You don't want to be toxic. But at the same time, you definitely like women these days, I think one thing I've gotten from women more than ever is that in a there's so many like feminized there's a lot of masculine women out there, and the inverse is true as well. There's a lot of feminized men, and the good news is there's a lot of feminized men. There's a lot of men that aren't in competition with you because they're gay or trans or whatever. So the good news is that if you're a guy who's relatively well put together and has some good positive masculine traits, and then as Mean says has like those has the balancing elements to it, which to me is simply control. You need to be calm and you need to have control. And if you're calm and control, like I know my mom, I'll just finish on this. My mom is one of the strongest women I know, and perfectly capable. Like she was an emergency room nurse. She's perfectly capable of handling any medical emergency and being the calm center of the storm. But when it's a different kind of emergency, like when she was in traffic driving her car alone, and a dump truck backed up into her and crunched the front of her car, she stayed calm, but the first thing she did was call my stepdad and said, "Get here immediately." And he left work at the law firm downtown, drove there immediately, and took care of everything.